Okay, so we've finished talking about the events of the play. We've got through all of Act 5, but as we end, I want to wrap things up a little more. As we end, I'm curious what you think of my take on Hamlet. Do you agree with my stance that Hamlet is a good deal motivated through the whole play to find a way to get revenge so that he cannot lose the throne or his life? That objective motivates his madness, his anger at his mom's stupidity, his using of Ophelia, his reluctance to kill the king right away, his mistaking Polonius for the king and acting so quickly to kill him because he just blew his cover in front of his mom, in front of the person behind the curtain. What do you think? I like this view because it informs acting choices. It provides a clear objective to every choice that Hamlet makes, and it makes it easier to maybe portray Hamlet to the audience. But I would like to present some commentary on a few of the other options, a few of the other opinions on Hamlet. And I think these are very interesting as well. And I think you could definitely go in any of these directions. I think it becomes tricky to pin him down the more abstract you get when you're acting. The harder it is to portray what you mean. So, but these are definitely some of the directions you could take his character if you choose. So one is that he is procrastinating his uncle's death because he is just a weak person. He either doesn't want to kill because of some character flaw, or, maybe it's a good thing because in our today's standards, good people don't kill others. But you know what I mean, though, that it's a flaw that he can't kill Claudius for most of the play. That the weight of the revenge was too much, and so he was tossed around by these impulses and these hesitations, and that this procrastination was his major flaw. Samuel Taylor Coleridge supports this idea. He thinks that deep within Hamlet is an indecisiveness and inability to commit an act that is born from him being so smart and so within the world of his own mind. He says, Coleridge says, that greatness of genius, which led Hamlet to a perfect knowledge of his own character, which, with all strength of motive, was so weak as to be unable to carry into act his own most obvious duty. He also proclaims that when Hamlet decides not to kill the king when he's praying, that it is just an excuse, that he can't bring himself to kill him, and that he just uses this as an out, as an excuse for not killing him right then. And there are pros and cons to this idea. The pros are that if he is really weak and cannot follow through and is using it as an excuse, then maybe he's not so heartless as his words make him seem. That he really doesn't feel good about backstabbing a praying man, and that makes it easier to root for him as a character. The cons of this theory are that he has just come from the excitement of finding out that he was right about his suspicions about the king. He's right on the tails of this, motivation, it's the witching hour. He's ready to do it. The king gave himself away. He's eager to get it over with, but he's got to go to his mom first. And then he spills the beans to his mom about his madness. He tells her openly that it's all been an act and that Claudius killed his father. He is assuming that the revenge will be final so soon that it won't matter anymore. He tells her of Claudius's guilt. The second he hears someone behind the curtain, the second he thinks that the king has overheard this, he kills without any hesitation whatsoever. So does he have a problem with killing the king? And I don't know, because he doesn't do it, but then he basically does it. It's just the wrong person. A.C. Bradley comments on Coleridge's ideas, and he says that all of that isn't true. That his philosophicalness and the way he's always in his head is what made him indecisive. Okay, let me start that over. I'm messing up my words here. So A.C. Bradley says that the idea that Coleridge presents, that the way he's always in his head is what made him indecisive, is not true. And he he says that this would imply that Hamlet's procrastination was the normal response of an over-speculative nature confronted with a difficult practical problem. A.C. Bradley goes on to argue that there's no proof that being over-speculative would equal inaction. Those don't necessarily just like automatically line up. You can be in your head and still be able to act and kill someone. He argues that Hamlet's nature before all of this happened, maybe before the play, was actually deeply moral, and that he was an idealist. He idealized things, that he has such a way of describing his father, describing human nature and the earth, that he has such a keen ability to observe those around him and see under the surface level. And because of this, when something ends up not being good or right, it hits him so hard. And he argues that everything his mother did, adultery and marrying his uncle, etc., would have been the driving force of him mentally spinning out. So A.C. Bradley says, quote, "It was the moral shock of the sudden ghastly disclosure of his mother's true nature, falling on him when his heart was aching with love and his body doubtless was weakened by sorrow. It brings bewildered horror, then loathing, then despair of human nature. His whole mind is poisoned. He can never see Ophelia in the same light again. She is a woman and his mother is a woman. Hamlet's highest endowments, his moral sensibility and his genius, become his enemies. A nature morally blunter would have felt even so dreadful a revelation less keenly. He cannot prevent himself from probing and lacerating the wound in his soul. And when, with the fading of his passions, the vividness of this idea abates, it does so only to leave behind a boundless weariness and a sick longing for death." He argues that Hamlet is feigning madness, but he has another separate mental affliction that is brought on by his mother's betrayal and his father's death. And I actually agree with all of this to some extent. But I don't like this to be like the main objective as an actor. It's more weak. And an objective based only on a feeling is harder to make acting choices on. So I think the objective still needs to remain a strong, get revenge, but do so without compromising your safety and throne. But I think that this grief and weariness and frustration is all there too and is huge. And it's there because he has to deal with all of this while he's grieving. That's hard to do. It's hard to take on big tasks when you feel sick at heart. I like to think of Ophelia really affecting him emotionally and mentally too. I like to think that he is frustrated by how long his plans are taking, by the path he chose to fake madness, because it's forcing him to put aside whatever plans he had to win over Ophelia. And that witnessing what it is doing to her is causing him even more turmoil. I don't necessarily think he hates Ophelia because his mom is a woman and Ophelia is a woman. I think he's smarter than that. I think he's more observant of the nuances of different humans. He switches so effortlessly between prose and verse, depending on who he's talking to. He can poke fun at anyone in the cleverest way. He can pick a friend, Horatio, who's good and true and hold fast to him. He can suspect that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are not sincere. I just don't think deep down he would treat Ophelia harshly because he lost his trust in womankind. I think he treated her the way he did out of necessity of carrying through his plan of acting mad to protect himself from the king. Do I think that acting mad was the best way? Honestly, it was probably a horrible way. He could have found proof so much faster. He could have skipped all the madness and made quick work of it all. But once he started down this path, events kept drawing him back to be forced to keep up this ruse, this pretending. And I think that frustrated him. Okay, so maybe you don't agree with all of my speculations. Maybe you do. That's okay. Not many scholars agree with each other on Hamlet. You will never see two Hamlets acted in the same way. And you know, it's a play. He's a character. That's the beauty of it. You really could choose to play him in so many different ways. So yes, I think he was sick with grief. I think his world was shaken. No, I don't think he was actually mad. Yes, I think he was motivated in every action by trying to save his own skin and claim the throne in the process of getting revenge. I'm not sure if he had a moral problem with getting revenge, as he killed, seeing killing as evil. it was a much more common thing in the time of Hamlet and a matter of honor and not seen in the same light as it would be seen today. And he did kill Polonius and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Yes, I think he made a ton of mistakes, and I think he could have done everything much more succinctly. No, I don't think he had hard feelings towards Ophelia. Maybe through all of this, all of his interactions with her, he was testing her a little bit to see how loyal she would be. But I think he was upset with what he was forced to do with her. No, I personally don't think he had an Oedipus complex for his mother, but I do think it was disturbing for him to see his mother be so affectionate with another man who wasn't his father, and to see someone who he needed to be a beacon of goodness in his life suddenly acting in a way that was deeply disturbing to him. Yes, I think he knew what he was doing the whole time, but that he was tied up in an overly complex plan, because he's the type of person to overthink things and overcomplicate things. Too many ponderables, as they say in Jeeves and Wooster. And I think through it all, he was very weary and bitter, weary and sad and betrayed and alone. Okay, so that's my personal take in a nutshell. In a very long, multi-video nutshell. Thank you for sticking with me. I would love to hear what you think. I was super nervous to do this because there's so many opinions on Hamlet. There's so many things that I could have said. And I just don't know. I'm just nervous that people are going to get on here and be like, "You're wrong," and I might be wrong. I don't know, but I mean, if a 5-year-old Master Betty, infant actor of the Regency period, could play Hamlet, and if someone could decide, okay, we're going to play Hamlet naked, then I don't think my ideas are the craziest you've ever heard. So thank you so much for joining me, and I really hope that you've come to appreciate this amazing play. It's sad, it's horrible, everyone dies, but it's also so good. There's so many lines that are so insightful, so many lines that are just, the language of it is just so beautiful, or just the way he says the lines. It's truly one of my favorites, and I'm so glad I was able to revisit this play yet again. And thank you so much for joining me.